My name is Marsha Clark, and I am an entrepreneur and founded my own company almost 20 years ago, Marsha Clark and Associates. We focus on leadership and executive development. So the purpose of this video is I do a lot of different leadership programs, and I'll be really honest with you and tell you that everybody wants me to cram more and more into one day. So this is something that takes a bit of time just to lay these foundational elements because they're woven throughout most of my programs. And we can send it as pre-work so we get to cram more stuff into the days. Leadership is a mindset, and what I really mean by that is that it's how we live our lives. It's the principles and values that guide us. And, you know, leadership is leading ourselves first. And so from that standpoint, it's how we interact with our friends, our neighbors, our colleagues, our teammates, vendors, suppliers, everybody. And it's really being thoughtful in how we want to interact and, exchange information or have conversations or do meetings or make recommendations. And it's not a box on an org chart. It's not a job title. It really is the principles and values by which we live our lives. When I think about the values that I really use to guide my life, it's around integrity, it's around honesty, it's around caring and kindness and really unconditional love. And so the leadership mindset is about both the personal and the professional. It's pervasive throughout our lives. And so that's the core. It's the thing that I call on when it comes time to make a decision or to be thoughtful in how I want to interact with another person. I've done work with leaders around the world, both men and women, for many, many, many years now. And when I look at the literature, when I talk with companies and what competencies they're looking for in their leaders, the three are these. The first one is dealing with ambiguity. And that's really about the world is not black and white, it's a very gray world. And we often think about things in terms of it's either this or it's that. And in the world of dealing with ambiguity, it's both this and that. And it can be contradictory, it can be paradoxical, it can be how do I make order? And that's what the best leaders do, is they can create some coherence out of this gray area or this fuzzy situation that we may be in. So first one is dealing with ambiguity. The second one is resiliency. And this is I have to bounce back. I have to be tenacious. I have to persevere. So if I present a best idea or a recommendation or a proposal and I get a no back or not good enough or not going to work, I've got to decide, is this important enough to me as a leader that I think this is the right approach, the right solution? I've got to step away and then come back and say, try again. So I've got to have that bounce back capability. Resiliency is not just me trying to get my way. It's not me having my own personal agenda and driving it to be right or to win. Resiliency is about, I really do think this is the best solution in service to the organization or the team or the client, whatever the case may be. And that's why I want to be tenacious about it and to bounce back because I truly think it's in that best interest. And then the third most sought after leadership competency is learning agility. And that has three questions attached to it. And these seem like very simple questions, and yet they're very powerful questions. The first one is, what did I do? So if I look at my calendar on any given day, the meetings, the conversations, the emails I write, what did I do? What was I trying to accomplish? What were the deliverables I was trying to produce or the effect that I was trying to produce? And then the second learning agility question is, what did I learn? We have an opportunity. What worked? What didn't work? What were the variables that needed to be taken into account? What was the impact of what my decisions or my proposals or my interactions had? And then the third question, which is more about the agility aspect of it, is how will that help me going forward? So if you think about what did I do, what did I learn, and how will I be able to use that as I move forward in my life? And it's one of the highest orders of critical thinking, which is what enables us to not make the same mistake over and over again, but to be able to transfer what we learned from project A to project B to project C and so on. It depends. That's right. It is. The idea that there are thousands of books written on leadership, and I've read hundreds of them. But one of the things I've learned in my personal life, my professional life, the academic research, the literature, and so on, is that there's no one answer to anything. I've got to be really mindful of what are the variables that I need to take into account with any, again, personal or professional situation that I find myself in. What strategy do I want to deploy? What's the objective that I'm trying to achieve? And then what tools do I need to bring to the table? But I've got to be very strategic about understanding what I'm trying to accomplish, and then I can proceed with the answer once I understand the it depend variables. Yeah, I think oftentimes we just look at what result are we trying to achieve, what deliverable, what outcome, that kind of thing. But then I also want the it depends to be about the relationship. What kind of relationship do I have now? What kind of relationship do I want? And it's not being superficial about that. But, I often talk to people when they're getting ready for interactions or presentations or whatever, and it's when they leave, what do you want them to think and what do you want them to feel about what you said and did and about you? And that about you is where the relationship piece comes to play. To the fourth foundational element, and this is a phrase, I don't really have a catch-all for it, but it's clarity, skills, courage, and timing. And this idea, everyone that I talk to, and I know my life as well, is just I'm running as fast as I can to keep up to get all the things done that I need to. And if I'm running so fast, I'd go on automatic pilot. And I go into my default patterns and my default behaviors, which may not be the best of me that I can bring to the table. And so this idea of stopping long enough to be thoughtful, to be mindful, and to be deliberate and get clear about what do I want to accomplish? What do I want the relationship to look like? What strategy and tools should I use? If I don't get clear about that on the front end, I can go in a lot of different directions, or I can churn, and spin. And so clarity allows me to be much more efficient as well as much more effective, but I got to do that first. And then I got to deploy whatever skills that I need in order to achieve what my clarity has offered up in this particular scenario. And then the third is the courage piece. And I really like to quote Winston Churchill here because I think it's about a choice point. The first point is it takes courage to know when to stand up and speak, to have my voice heard, to put my voice out there. And it takes courage to know when to sit down and listen. And the best leaders who are being thoughtful, intentional, and are clear know which one of those choices to make. And then the last piece of this, and the clarity, skills, courage, timing, there's really three aspects to that as well. What meetings or what conversations do I need to have before whatever formal interaction is going to take place? I need to go talk to my allies. I need to go do research. I need to, broaden my perspective ahead of time. If I don't have all of those things in place, I get to have more of those really long meetings. So if I do a little bit more, it's the pay me now on the front end just a little bit more, but you get the benefit of that on the long end, and every meeting's going to be more efficient and more effective. Slow down to speed up, and this is one that I learned probably almost 30 years ago. It was said to me, I was going through this executive assessment center where they take you through a battery of tests and different scenarios and situations, and you get to show up as your best executive self. And at the end of a 3-day executive assessment experience, that one of the things they said to me was, Ms. Clark, what you really need to do to learn how to do is to slow down to speed up. And quite honestly, I laughed at it because I'm thinking, you don't know my life. I'm a working mother and wife, and I travel 60 to 75% of the time. I got things to do, kind of thing. And so, and I took it to heart, paying attention, wanting to notice. And here's what I learned when I began to practice this slowing down piece. It did help me to get clear, and I began to think about what are the things I need to focus on that are really going to move the needle and take us to a meaningful place versus just getting things checked off my to-do list. Because I can have 27 of those on any given day, but it's only 3 or 4 of them that are really going to make a difference. And so I often use the slow down method, if you will, or the concept to say when I have competing priorities, what's going to matter the most a year from now? Is it going to be number 13 on my to-do list, or is it going to be number 1 that I spend more time and energy and effort on? But if I didn't slow down long enough to really think that through, again, I'd just be checking things off of my to-do list and running as fast as I could, but it wouldn't get me to where I really wanted to be. Well, it is one of my favorites. It's the what else could be true question. And you know, as human beings, the human condition is such that we make up stories. Every day we make up hundreds and hundreds of stories with every both verbal interaction, written interaction, even nonverbal interactions. I see someone and they look at me a certain way and I'm making up a story about what's going on. And so when I make up those stories, they're not always the most positive stories and they're not always the most accurate stories. But if I'm not being conscious about the what else could be true, I can immediately go to my assumptions, my interpretations are somehow accurate. And the other trap that this gets us into that really takes us out of the leadership mindset is, in many of these stories, we typically reserve 3 roles for ourselves in our stories. One of them is that I'm either the hero or the heroine who comes riding in, to save the day, which, certainly makes me feel good in my story. The second one is the victim. They're doing it to me. They're hurting me. They're making me mad. They're making me look bad. And I can get into the poor, pitiful me. Again, not very useful, but I don't have to take any responsibility when I'm the victim. And that's not about leadership. And then the third is the martyr role. So I can be the, and dare I say, self-righteous martyr, which, puts me into the, if they'd only listened to me, this would not have happened. Or I told you so, is that martyr approach. And when I think about those in our stories, again, that takes us very far afield from the leadership mindset that, is what I'm trying to teach and facilitate and support in the work that I do. And so this idea of asking myself what else could be true moves me from a place of judgment, criticism, blame, hurt, disappointment, to a place of possibility, which instead of closing things down and bringing me down, it opens up possibilities, and it offers me the opportunity to go ask questions, to inquire more. And what I've learned in doing this is I always learn something from the other person. So it broadens the perspective, gives me more options, more possibilities, again, which then advances whatever it is we're trying to do in a meaningful way. Isn't that fascinating as a way for me to manage what I call my triggers? So when I find myself in that judging, criticizing, blaming place, rather than going there, if I remind myself, isn't it fascinating that what the person is saying is so different than what I'm thinking, or that it comes from a place that I don't understand, or it sounds ridiculous, and yet it keeps me and allows me to stay engaged with the person rather than shutting down. Isn't that fascinating? Leads me to what else could be true, and all of that opens up a bigger possibility. So the 7th foundational element is that it is, at the end of the day, it is the leader's responsibility to create additional capacity or capabilities in others. So whether that means being a coach, being a guide, being a mentor, it also means that rather than me doing everything myself, that I've got to help teach other people how to do that. And I will tell you that in the executive coaching and the leadership programs that I do, one of the biggest challenges for leaders is to go from being the person who solves the problem to being the leader who ensures that the problem gets solved but doesn't necessarily solve it themselves. It absolutely is. It can be both the beginning or the end. It's kind of the whole deal. And that is that we have a toolkit. And what I like to say about the toolkit, all these other things fit into the toolkit. And that good leaders know they have a toolkit, and great leaders know what tool to use when. And this to me, and a tool, let me tell you what a tool is. So a tool can be a framework, a methodology, a blueprint, a checklist, a set of questions, one-liners, even songs, book titles. I use all of those things because they help me remember what I have access to. And so, we have the old saying, when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. That's not always appropriate if I'm trying to screw something or if I'm trying to saw something. So thinking about it in those terms. Part of being a good leader is, in building trust as a leader, is the predictability aspect. And so I don't want people to be able to predict that I'm always going to be hard or soft or fast or slow or any of those. I want them to know that I'm going to be thoughtful and, again, considering all the variables. I'm going to be clear about it. I'm going to be strategic about it. I'm going to open up possibilities. And then I'm going to choose the right tool that's going to enable us to do the best work, again, in service to the larger good. And so knowing I have a toolkit and knowing what tool to use when is one of the most critical elements, and something that I keep coming back to over and over and over again in the leadership programs as well as the coaching work that I do. Leadership is a mindset is the first one. The three most sought after competencies being dealing with ambiguity, resilience, and learning agility. The third being the answer to every leadership question is, it depends. The next one being clarity, skills, courage, and timing. The next one is the slow down to speed up, which is take a breath and pause. The next one is about what else could be true and opening up the possibilities of all of that. And then you've got to create capacity in others, and you got to recognize that you have a great toolkit and that great leaders know what tool to use when. Oh, yes, isn't that fascinating? Yes, isn't that fascinating? Which, again, is a part of what can help us manage those triggers. One of the things I've learned over all the years of both study and my own experience in my personal life as well as my professional life is that there's no one profile that defines a leader, that we come in all shapes, sizes, styles, personas, profiles, and so on. And that the best leaders are the ones who are the most authentic leaders. And that means knowing who I am, what my strengths are, playing to my strengths, recognizing the strengths in others and allowing them to play to theirs. And that, my wish for leaders is that you can be your best self and you can present your best self every single day and not, think that you're not enough of this or not enough of that. We're all exactly enough of what we need to be. We're not here to be fixed because we're not broken, and we really want to be able to just go present our best selves as the leaders that we are. Yes, and Tracy, thank you very much for being a part of this with me. We go back a long way, and it's great to be able to just have a conversation and somebody to video us on that. And I want to thank you very much for playing the role of facilitator and moderator in this. And I also want to thank Michelle Adams and her company, Marketing Brainology, because without them, we couldn't be doing this. And then also thank my staff of Misty Moore and Natalie Atkins, who have supported all of this to make it happen today.